Welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Dr. C. Nagalakshmi, working as Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Hyderabad. The paper which is under discussion now is Methodology of Research in Sociology, and the name of the module is the audience, disciplinary peer group, sponsors, and common public. One has to know as a researcher as to who are the people who will receive the research reports. It is important to know who are the audience to whom the research report or a dissertation or a journal article is addressed to. Depending on the kind of audience, who are either very specialists in the area of interest, and sometimes there are experts to whom we write, or sometimes sociological research is addressed to general public also. So this module will try and familiarize with you on ways and means of writing academic research to these different sets of audience. The audience for academic research and publication are as diverse as the media or source available for publishing. Levels of knowledge differ among these audience along with their intellectual ability and interest on various issues. One can classify the audience into two self-explanatory categories. Specialist audience, who include academicians, practitioners, and research sponsors. The second is the general audience, which include public and others. There are formal channels such as articles in purely academic journals or research monographs which are aimed at specialist and expert audience. Informal channels include popular print media, digital media, or the general public and others. Writing a paper or publishing it for pedagogic purpose requires an approach which is qualitatively different from the one required for writing in popular media, such as editorials in magazines and blogs on the internet for general public and non-specialist audience in newspapers. There are also other creative and visual means such as poster presentations at the conferences and conventions and oral presentations. Each of these varied forms of media for communicating research findings to the public have their limitations as well as advantages and appeal to specific audience. Authors have to develop sophisticated sense of who the target audience is and what is the appropriate level and style of communication or language that is to be used before presenting or writing their findings. It is worth mentioning here that specialized journals and media houses do not publish all types of findings and remain confined to their aims and objectives while selecting a particular article. As a corollary, the basic considerations for a researcher are how and to whom the research work is communicated. Also necessary is the knowledge of the target audience specified by the employers or the funding body or institution to whom they wish to disseminate their work. In other words, the target audience can sometimes be identified by the funding body in the form of journals, conferences, or alternatively, sometimes they can be chosen by the researchers themselves. In any case, the same work and research findings can also be appropriately presented through a website, through a leading journal paper for academic audience, or through a book. It can be reviewed and valued in various ways. And the following sections present details of the different audience and the writing requirements. The first is about the general writing and professional standards. Writing with professional standard can actually mean that one has to use complex terms or phrasing or extensive jargonizing, which only some experts will be able to follow and receive the arguments and findings. It may also not mean the same. It actually means that the text of the paper or publication reads well and conveys the study and its theoretical underpinnings in an interesting and an unambiguous manner. Ideally, there should be clarity in structure, a narrative flow, adherence to grammar and writing style. Here are a few pointers to achieve professional standards for publishing and appealing to readers or audience. Using figures, graphs, tables, charts of data can be used, and instead of using a long descriptive analysis to grasp a reader's interest. Epigraphs. There are quotations placed at the start of a paper or a chapter or a section that makes a point or sets the background for what is in the content that follows. Epigraphs chosen carefully can be thought-provoking and adds to the arguments made. Quotations. These can be self-explanatory, chosen with diligence, placed within the context and the text. Appropriate content. Clarity of content with no repetition or redundancy, adherence to academic standards of writing and appropriate style. Avoiding malpractices and plagiarism is one more way of achieving professional standard. This requires drafting the article, chapter, or the content of the report with care and authenticity, and giving due credits to the work of other scholars cited or used in the text of the publication. We now speak about the specialist audience, including academicians, practitioners, and the disciplinary peer group. The first group of audience are the specialists, and one can include here the disciplinary peer group and the practitioners of the discipline. For the disciplinary peer group, academic peer-reviewed journals are best regarded as of highest quality in terms of content and rigor. Journal publications are recognized by institutions as the most valuable and worthy form of dissemination of research findings. If such publication is available online, the scope of accessibility increases many folds. The audience for journal articles. Journals have specific set of aims and objectives, specialization in subjects and areas and themes. These are mentioned in the author guidelines provided by the editorial board and printed in the journal or published on the website. Every article or paper written is subjected to peer review before publication in reputed journals. This process assures that the content is worthy by stringent academic standards. Adherence to strict guidelines for organizing the structure of the paper as well as the font and details of the sections, subsections, headers, which are formatted in formal style, and restrictions on the length and content is mandatory for this form of publishing. Accessed only by the academic professionals, printed journals are more often available in libraries of higher educational institutions and usually not read by the general audience. As compared to that, e-journals are now available online. As a result of the changes in communication technology, most of the printed journals of earlier age are also available now on the net or internet. There are even research websites like ResearchGate or academia.edu which allow a writer to put up unpublished articles and seminar papers online. Whatever may be the source, it is highly desirable that every article written must be structured to the target audience of that particular journal or source. There are several types of journals, some of which are generic to the fields of study and publish research work from across the discipline, while some are interdisciplinary. Journals have a wide circulation in print as well as online and have audience who are professionals in their field of study across the globe. Hence, the structure and format are very crucial for acceptance for publication. As mentioned earlier, the generic disciplinary journals have specialist audience and can raise citation scores for the authors. It is very important to know the index scoring, including impact factor of a journal and whether the journal serves the audience one wishes to engage with. The audience may also be categorized or specialized as specialists, practitioners, researchers from the same as well as other disciplines. The authors should hence consult colleagues for opinions on such matters. One may also try to balance the writing style of an article so that it can reach the specialist as well as general audience. Professional audience access journal articles and they seek high standard and structure as mentioned before. This may sometimes vary slightly and depending on the journal's aims and objectives. And the most common parts of the journal articles are the title with authors and their names and affiliations, an abstract, some keywords, an introduction, literature review, theoretical framework which may be combined with some review of literature, methodology, analysis which can be subdivided into sections, a discussion and conclusion including suggestions if any, and last but not least the references. Variations in writing articles for academic audience are for a special issue, which can be focused on a specific theme, and working papers. The authors present an argument with reference to already existing theoretical perspectives to analyze a social phenomenon, which is under study. The article can subscribe to a perspective or can even be critical of the available perspectives using the available data collected by employing rigorous research methods and tools. A journal article can also be a review of all the available published literature to present a comprehensive conceptual analysis in a particular research area, the trends, and point out the direction of research. But most of the peer-reviewed journals in sociology prefer articles based on fieldwork with a sound theoretical framework. Every journal is headed by an editor or a panel of editors who liaise with the authors and put the papers through a refereeing process. They take decisions in accepting or rejecting the papers and allocate them to appropriate issues in focus to suit the needs of the subscribing audience. The editors rely on an editorial board or panel of experts, including one or more referee, for blind review of the manuscript sent by the author or authors. The editorial boards guide the authors on issues like quality, methodology, theoretical contribution, and offer guidelines to authors for writing style of an article submitted for review in the concerned journal. It is important for the writers and academicians to be aware of the standards of journals and editorial board, who are the first audience before sending their manuscript for publication. Irrespective of whether a reputed journal accepts an article for publication with a minor or a major review or not, the comments sent by the reviewers to the authors are helpful in upgrading the content and quality of the research paper. So the journal referees, who are the first critical audience. The referees for journals are now the first and the most important critical group of audience for a scholarly publication. They assess the quality and content of an article before publication with specific criteria such as whether the paper or article fits into the aims and brief of the journal, its pertinence to the journal's readership, whether the contribution is significant to the discipline and the literature concerned, the clarity in writing and structure of the paper, and its appropriately. On these criteria, the referees communicate some changes and some modifications to the article to the authors, thus enhancing the quality of paper as well as making it more pertinent. Sometimes an article may be reviewed by multiple referees. The author is then asked to make relevant changes based on the recommendations of these referees. The article can thus be accepted as it is or accepted with some revisions. Sometimes an article may be sent for a thorough revision and the authors may be asked to entirely resubmit it. The revised paper will be then sent to some or all of the referees for re-evaluation. In case the article does not suit the journal's aims, or if its contribution is not very significant, the article might also be rejected and has to be sent out to a relevant journal with suitable changes alternately. The referees also advise the authors for minor or major revisions and accept the paper for publication, or even suggest another journal or source sometimes. As such, reviews in most cases are done by unknown reviewers to the authors, which is known as blind review. The quality of comments submitted by different reviewers help to maintain a global standard. This audience group within this discipline concerned for the journal offer constructive criticism to the writers and help them produce a well-argued and balanced article. The final draft after revision suggested by disciplinary peers usually shows a strong argument and structure, offer new ideas, analysis, and thinking. It is usually in appropriate length with no redundancy and will be in continuity with the targeted journal's aims and objectives. The next type of audience is for books. Another form of academic publication is book publication. Books provide a broader scope for authors to present a theory or findings of a study and often require some degree of visibility through some marketing by the publishers. Books also have the advantage of being seen by wider audience depending on the degree of promotion activities of the publishers. Unlike printed journals, which are available only on subscription or in libraries, Even e-journals are available online these days. Books are actually available to all readers, whether academic or journal, for purchase as well as in libraries. The writers and authors can choose to write on a chosen theme with academic rigor and cater to peer groups also. They may also adopt a style with simpler language and avoid jargon to cater to the general readers. Even though the time and effort required to write, edit and complete a manuscript for a book is much more, there is an advantage of reaching out to the peer group in academics as well as to general audience. There's another way of communicating through books is contributing to book chapters. Chapters in edited volumes are similar to the journal articles and books in certain ways, and also in terms of the standards of writing and exploring specific ideas and issues. These are broad, explanatory in nature, and are written based on empirical material compiled for specific theme set by the editor of the book. The editors are the first audience for the written content for book chapters. They are similar to journal referees, and they review and offer suitable recommendations so that the content of the chapter, including style, will be coherent with the set theme or objective of the volume. But such reviews in many cases are not critical and blind like the ones done by professional reviewers of reputed journals. Other set of audiences are those at conferences and talks. A conference is a general term which is used to refer to an event with audience attending as participants and organized interactive sessions based on themes and titles of presentations. In a conference, there is a live audience and there is instant feedback for the presenters or authors. Conference thus includes events in a sequence in a formal environment. Other academic events include seminars, symposia and colloquia, workshops and plenaries. Each of these events are conducted by research institutions, educational institutions and departments within universities. Academic institutions or professional organizations also indulge in these conferences and seminars, but they differ slightly in their formats of organizing them. They offer opportunities to academicians to present their research work which is still in progress so that they can be discussed by select peers, distinguished experts as audience, and they can be published later as research papers in journals. Often seminar proceedings are published in book form by organizers of these academic events. The other type of audience are research sponsors. Research projects are sponsored by several organizations and the findings are published as reports. These reports are circulated sometimes to a restricted group, such as the sponsors or a closed group of experts. They are actually published later for the general public depending on the sponsoring institution's preference. Thus, the difference lies in the form of disseminating the report and its findings. The research sponsors usually specify the format of the required research report and the variations are subtle. The other terms that are used for a report include executive summary, a communique, profile, dossier, statement and such. These forms are published as specified by the sponsors and the audience is a select group to whom the findings are most useful and appropriate. It is important for the writer to know which form of report is required and what style is to be followed for attracting the specific audience. Some reports are published by private organizations which are for the perusal of specialists. Unlike the general reports published, publicly accountable institutions or organizations usually do this, and these reports are written in formats with technical words as per the specialist needs sometimes. The last or the most important group of audience is the general public, and this includes popular media for publishing. Popular press that seeks to publish and cater to general audience include newspapers, magazines and internet sites. These media are accessible to a very large potential audience with varying levels of knowledge including experts as well as general audience. Universities and colleges are usually open to publishing these sources unless the research is sponsored and has to be confidential. The following are the most common sources to present research for general audience. This includes mass media, which is the print media including newspapers, magazines, audio and visual media including radio, television, and currently internet videos. And then on the internet there are websites, blogs, social networking websites, blog spots, mailing lists, and bulletins. The first source for general public is the mass media. The authors at times find that their research work and findings are relevant and path-breaking and of use for public and a general audience. In such cases, the choice to publish research findings in popular media is suitable. There are also popular media such as the tabloids, the audiovisual media including radios. Now there is a plenty of number of private radio channels, television channels, and videos on internet. It is important to note that the decision to write for the mass media is at the author's discretion, but publishing at the discretion of the editors. It is necessary that one has to prepare a press release with the credentials of the research institution and the funding agency. If anyone tries to draw the required attention of the editors and the public also is important consideration. Usually for this purpose within the universities there is a department for public relations and media relations. Sometimes depending on the prominence of the institution and significance of the research, the media may approach the research team for news briefs on the report. This enables the wider audience reach. In such cases, also the research team must prepare an appropriate report that highlights salient research findings without heavy theoretical jargon and yet conveying the substance of the research. In the print media, there is the newspaper and magazine audience. Writing for this audience comprising non-specialist, common public requires a style that is close to spoken word and in simple written expression, avoiding the usage of elaborate terms, words, and jargons unless these are required. There is a need to capture the interest of the audience in the popular media and in a more succinct format unless the article is for the open pages or editorials, which are popularly known as op-eds. Writing for magazines is different from writing for newspapers as they cater to audience who seek information more in the form of features and not as news. Authors for magazine articles must focus on the types of magazines that they are writing for and the specific audience for them. There are glossy consumers of theme-focused magazines, the trade and business-oriented magazines, feature-rich information-oriented ones. It is important to note the length, style, and format of submission, including the images, if it is required to catch the reader's audience attention for a writer. Coming to the audiovisual media, including radio, television, and internet videos. As with the print media, the audiovisual media, including radio, television, and the internet videos, are based mostly on feature presentations. The audience for these features may vary depending on the timing and duration of the presentation and whether live or recorded. Also, one has to note that if the presentation is by the author, then he or she will have to present oneself appropriately in a formal dress. These features can vary in the form of a talk, an interview, or in a discussion with other experts. The content presented must be simplified, condensed as per the nature of the feature, including the target viewers and listeners. The key points of the research findings must be carefully articulated to get across to the public. In the newscast features, one has to create a sharp and short sound bites, especially if the program is live telecast or broadcast and is not recorded, as there is no scope for correction in a live program. It is also equally important to quickly adjust to the ambience in a studio, the microphone, cameras, as well as these arc lights for an effective presentation. The tone of the presentation must be adjusted as per the discussion if there is a group of experts and as per the questions posed by the anchor or the interviewer. The program producer usually takes care of such details, but the research team should be collectively involved in compiling all the necessary details and prepare a script to suit the audience as suggested by the channel. Most important audience and source is the internet. Internet is the fastest growing and popular medium or segment for research publishing nowadays. As a network of networks, the audience for internet includes general as well as specialist audience in a wide spectrum. This medium provides a variety of platforms and allows audience or users to access information stored in computers across global networks, exchange information through mails and posts, initiate and participation in discussions is possible, and there are several databases. There are ways in which one can read and review and comment on these discussions available on internet. One can classify the internet sources as those which are refereed and those which are open. The moderated internet sites are websites, blogs, social networking sites, and online journals. The non-monitored are the mailing lists and open bulletin boards. The first source in the internet is the website. Websites are the visual interfaces of the World Wide Web and contain information presented in text, visuals, and sometimes audio-video formats. These sites are used to disseminate research to general and specialist audience who access the websites depending on their interest and necessity. Websites are also tools to conduct research through interactive means such as online surveys. Institutions and websites for projects provide information on the work of an institute or institution, their research team, and their publications. Audience and users can access updated information on the ongoing research, can correspond with the research team using the details for contact including email or a telephone, and the information as provided on the site. Online journals is the next. Online journals are equivalent to print journals mentioned in the earlier section, but they exist in the virtual form. Potential audience for an online journal is global and large, and most of these journals do not charge any subscription fees. The journals that publish in both print and online format, however, charge a certain subscription fees. It is possible for the audience of the online journals to judge the quality of a journal's content and validity, research rigor by the impact factor. The impact factor of the journal also depends to a large extent on the volume of the readership. Blogs and social networking websites are part of these websites sometimes and popular among the audience. These are online narratives logged in by the authors presenting their observations, opinions in interesting ways. Audience and users get an idea of the work that is being done by the author. They can respond and comment provided there is a space on the web page. The administrator of the website monitors the blog, and the author can accept or reject the comment or even respond to the comment. Mailing lists with research theme and topic are created by an institution or department or an individual interested in research or discussion, which allow the audience and users to converse and exchange information through emails on a specific topic. These lists are sometimes monitored, and every mail with response and discussion is redistributed to all those in the list. E-books. E-books are the same as printed books, but are available virtually, and are similar to online journals. They're available as virtual versions and as downloadable formats. These are sometimes sold online and are not accessible to all audience. Some sections of the books are given open access to generate interest in the audience through the publishers' websites depending on the arguments or agreements with the authors. Bulletins and newslists is another way of reaching to audience. Audience or users can access the bulletin boards through memberships, and the bulletins are periodically checked for updates with specific subject headers, and many discussions, comments, and responses follow. Audience receive all the updates and comments unless they are marked specifically to individuals. A critical appraisal is therefore required at this point. It therefore appears that there are various media for presentation of research findings, as so is the type of audience, and all of them differ in their formats. The effectiveness of research and utility of the findings can be reached on to a larger, wider audience if the preference of the audience is given weightage. It should, however, be noted that the content of any research must be copyrighted and protected by the time it is published. The authors should equally take care of proper citation of others' work to avoid the crime of plagiarism. One cannot, however, deny that publishing is a big business today, and publishing houses do actually use the published research for commercial purpose. The author or authors, however, retain copyright even while allowing the publisher to use the article or a book for sale and publicity. The free copies of article given to others and authors may, however, be circulated in a print or a soft form. Any reader may send an email to authors for a soft version of any article published these days. Notwithstanding the positive aspects of electronic technology in dissemination of knowledge, it should be noted that in remote locations, internet accessibility is either absent or is very poor. And issues like lack of high-speed internet connectivity is also an issue sometimes. There are also some who are either digitally or visually challenged, and all these contribute to the digital divide in contemporary times to disseminate the research findings. To cater to the needs of some people, authors may make their resources available on alternate sources and publish in local and vernacular media for greater debate and discussion on a chosen research theme. So to conclude this module, it is important to first of all to know that there are diverse audience groups for sociological research, and to suit the needs of the diverse audience, one has to adopt different strategies to present the findings. So accordingly, to a general audience, one can use different media such as websites, mass media, newspapers, print journal and articles, and the strategy to present one's own research findings will be different. Also, when one is writing to the sponsors of a research project, one is reporting research findings to such sponsoring organizations, there are other different strategies. Also, the academic audience is as diverse as the kind of writings one is catering to. For example, in a conference there are live audience, and one person can, whoever is the person is presenting in the conference will get a live feedback. So one has to adopt a different strategy. So the most important point in all of this module is to know the character, the need and the response of the audience to whom one is writing, and appropriately adopt a strategy to address the issues that can interest them. In that way, one's own research can be made more interesting and more popular, as well as the findings can be of use to the concerned audience group.